And I did it because that was the most logical place to put a crate for the balance of the room, right? Like there was a spot there. I'm like, oh, it will look good here. Those are the things I said, it will look good here. Didn't think about the dogs. And it was like, it took like the first time where I put them in the crate. When I went to go get them out of the crate, Nike was just eye stalking Gunther the entire time. And he's in the back of his crate going, why are you looking at me like that? And I was like, oh, that was dumb. Why would I put you across from one another? Right? So sometimes our crate placement creates conflict between dogs, especially when you're bringing in a new dog. Yes, today on the podcast, it's our final episode of Peace in the Pack. Today, we're talking about a very important concept, us versus them, the key to survival. Let's get into it. Ready to have a calm and peaceful life with your dog without the stress of those fear-based behaviors? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I've been there, overwhelmed by all the conflicting dog training advice and unsure of what to do next. But now I help dog lovers like you simplify your life with your dog by building confidence naturally, fostering trust, and addressing those fear-based challenges. So, if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners and let's get to it. Hey there, friend. If you're like me and have tried all the things, I did all of the classes. I did all of the obedience classes, read the books, did all this stuff, used the clickers, did all the things, and still found myself with a reactive, really well-trained dog that I was terrified, honestly, to take anywhere. Then you're in the right place. Because if you're like me and you got frustrated with that and you needed to find something different, that's here. You found it. You're here. Welcome. This is Beyond Obedience, where we take everything, we hang our training hats up just for a little bit. We flip the script. We put the focus in on us. How can I show up differently? What's my mindset saying? What's my energy like? We're going to answer all of those questions and realize that we are, in fact, a powerful influence in our dog's life. We just have to learn how to tweak some things to make living with dogs so much easier. And once you get it, it's beautiful. After that, if you want to go back to the obedience, you can. It'll be easier. If you want to do the sporting stuff with your dog, it'll be easier. Trust me, everything gets easier when you understand all things beyond obedience. I hope that you will join us in our free community on Facebook. The group is called Living Beyond Obedience. I will put it in the show notes if you want to click on that. Come on over and join us. See if this is the right fit for you. And I can't wait to get started. I'll see you there. Well, hello, my dog-loving friend. It is Tracy. Welcome back. It is our final episode in our series, Peace in the Pack. Oh, are we cheering because the series has been great, or are we cheering because it's finally over? I don't know why we're cheering, but anyway, it's our sixth and final episode in our Peace in the Pack series. Thank you very much for joining me in this series. I think it's important, again, not just for people that have multiple dogs, but I think for everybody. Understanding how dogs communicate with one another will help you understand how they communicate, right? Because dogs only know how to be dogs. They can't pretend to be anything else. They're very adaptable and all that stuff, and we can train them and all that stuff. Yes. All that is true. However, their main communication is going to be dog. So when you start to see dogs communicating with one another, you start to unravel this communication, you start to see it differently, and everything in your life gets easier. So I really hope you've benefited from it. If you have, can you do me a favor and let me know? Either leave me a comment on Spotify, or even better, either send me a message, but even better, go to beyondobedience.ca/contact. There's a little microphone there. And what I want you to do with that microphone is click on it and leave me a voice message and just be like, hey, Tracy, this is my name. This is my dog's name. Really enjoyed this. Learned this. What was your aha moment? What was the thing that stood out for you in this series? Let me know. I really just like hearing those voice messages. If I'm being real. All right, let's get into it. Cause as you know, I can talk. So I wanted to end, I think, the series. Trust me, I could have kept going. There's so many other aspects to sort of talk about when it comes to cultivating a pro-social relationship with a pack of dogs or a group of dogs. But I wanted to sort of end off with a concept that I don't think we fully understood. At least I didn't really start to understand it until it was taught to me. But it's this idea of us versus them. It's kind of like hardwired in the dog's social skills, right? The idea that, when they form their social units, when they have their structure of what they think is part of their social unit, that everything else outside of that is not part of their social unit, right? In their mind, you sort of think of it as you're either with us or you're against us. It's not necessarily if you're with us or you're not with us. It's if you're with us or if you're not with us, you're against us, right? And because of that, sort of, again, it's a survival thing. Again with the survival, Tracy. Yes, with the survival, it's a survival thing. If you're not with us, you're against us. Now, obviously, we have breeds that are that we've genetically manipulated for that aspect of their survival to be a little bit more in the front, like our guard dogs, our livestock guardian dogs, our livestock guardian dogs are probably the prime example of if you're not with us, you're against us. And that comes right down to like even, family members that have moved out that come back for a visit and the dog's like, you don't live here anymore, like you're not with us anymore. So we can accidentally create division when it comes to this idea of if you're not with us, you're against us. Where does this come into play? Comes into play, anybody that fosters dogs. If you are fostering dogs and you're trying to sort of create a pro-social, even a temporary pack situation with a foster dog, we want to make sure that we are doing some things that foster, again, this idea of pro-social. But we can accidentally create an us versus them scenario with, for example, furniture placement or crate placement. I actually just shared this inside the Fearless Framework. I made that mistake very early on. And I see, this is me. I'll tell you right now, I share the good, the bad, and the ugly in that group. I tell you when I make mistakes. I make mistakes, my friend. But essentially, when we first picked up Gunther, Nike, our Jack Russell, was less than thrilled with him. And it was funny because, both Mark and I were like, Nike's going to love having a puppy. We just made that assumption. I don't know why we thought that. We were like, Nike will love a puppy because Nike's high energy and she loves wrestling with the cat. So therefore she must like puppies. What? Now that I say it out loud, what kind of weird ass human logic is that? It sounds funny now that I say it out loud, but that's what we thought. So we were like, we'll bring Nike with us to go pick up the puppy. It was a long drive. Like it was a 2-day drive. So we're like, we'll take Nike. Of course we took Nigel because Nigel's just Nigel. He's the best and he's calm. And we wanted him as our good role model dog. But we brought Nike because we were like, it'll be so much fun. Nike's going to love the puppy. Turns out Nike did not like the puppy. And we were like, what is happening? So, and there were a couple other things. I'm not going to get into it here. I discussed it inside the program or inside the student community, but there were a couple other things in there. But the main thing is like, she wasn't having it. And I was like, Mark was actually quite concerned because he was like, what happens if they don't like each other? And I'm like, relax. I've been doing this a while. Let me do my thing. But the funny thing is I made a mistake. And the first mistake that I made was when I brought Gunther's crate in, I set it up across the room. Such a rookie mistake. I set it up across the room facing Nike's crate. And I did it because that was the most logical place to put a crate for the balance of the room, right? Like there was a spot there. I'm like, oh, it will look good here. Those are the things I said, it will look good here. Didn't think about the dogs. And it was like, it took like the first time where I put them in the crate. When I went to go get them out of the crate, Nike was just eye stalking Gunther the entire time. And he's in the back of his crate going, why are you looking at me like that? And I was like, oh, that was dumb. Why would I put you across from one another? Right? So sometimes our crate placement creates conflict between dogs, especially when you're bringing in a new dog. And guest dynamics. I have the best video of when I was working with one of our incredible students, Dorothy, and she had issues with one of her dogs and her friend coming over, and her dog was always intimidating her friend. And I got her to film the whole thing for me. And we literally sat down and were like, okay, if you look at where you put your guest and where you put yourself, you have inadvertently created an us versus them. They would always have, she always have the guest sort of sitting on the sofa, which is where the guest would normally sit. But then she sat across from her guest on the chair with her dog on a leash beside her. So the whole time the dog is like, yeah, her and I, we don't like you. Right? And it's funny because I laugh at it because it's what every single one of us do. But we don't think about it from the dog's perspective, from this idea of us versus them, this idea that I'm now partnered up with this human. I'm now stronger in my conviction that I just don't like you. Right? That was the part that that people don't understand. So we have to be really, really careful that some of our best intentions, our crate setups, where our dogs sleep, where we put our dogs, where we sit in relation to other dogs. Remember all the stuff that we talked about leading up to this episode with levels and possessionary discussions and all of those things. Then we bring in another dog and we're like, we put them over there and we have us. Let's say we walk the dogs separately, or we walk the dogs in a way that we've, created this, we're walking together, but you're walking over there. There's so many little tweaks that we can do that help temper this us versus them and allow the dog to be brought into the fold in a safe way that eliminates this us versus them, and not only eliminates it, but gives our core pack of dogs the idea that this dog is a part of our unit. This is now a part of our social unit. One of the best ways to do that is with walking. So if you had a chance to come to the boot camp and you saw some of the videos that I took, we talked about, these two dogs, Ford and Lincoln, that never got along together. And one of the things that we used to always make them do was to walk together. And they could walk together. They were quite fine with being able to walk together, to work together, to socially migrate together. Still weren't great with playing with one another or pass-bys, but moving together as a pack in that ritual of migration was really a great way of helping a new dog feel like they're, coming into that. I don't know if I've ever told this story before, but back when we brought home our two Newfs, our original two Newfs, they were a breeder pair. So intact female, intact male. They were older. Like I didn't get these as young dogs. They were older dogs. And I knew bringing in intact dogs into a pre-existing pack of, I don't know how many we had at the time. I want to say maybe 8. I'd have to go back and look. But there was a number of dogs. We had a number of dogs. And it was a long drive. But when we got back, I said to Mark, let's start we got to start the dogs off right. And I took every single one of the dogs for a walk with the two new dogs. So it started off where I got out of the car, I set up the 2 dogs, Mark went in, got a dog, I walked the 3 dogs. Then I came back, I switched out that dog, brought another dog, walked the dogs. This is how I introduced every single one of the dogs to the 2 new dogs. And then we as a family took all the dogs for a pack walk together. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a lot of walking, Tracy. And it was. It was, friend. It was a lot of walking. But taking that time to walk all the dogs and then walking them around the property. We walked the 2 new dogs around the property, letting them know, like, this is our property. We were showing them the space. We were allowing them to sort of settle in. And then we walked them with everybody. All of that meant that we got these 2 beautiful brand new dogs, both intact, that entered into our pack dynamic seamlessly. Right? We had no conflict between any of the dogs and these 2 new intact older dogs entering in. Because keep in mind, when we're talking about introducing dogs, there's a lot of things that go into like how dogs sort of get into the fold. Breed plays a part, their sexuality plays a part, whether or not they're intact or not intact, when they were neutered, all of those things play a part. So we want to make sure that we are taking the time to create this "you're with us," right? I never wanted it to be like these 2 dogs are new and they're going to be over here, and now this dog over here is like not with us. Another interesting sort of observation I made when it comes to this us versus them. I've mentioned before, when I had my brick and mortar business back in Ontario, we had our house pack and then we had our kennel pack, because not all of the 19 dogs lived in our house. That would be crazy. We had anywhere between 5 to 8 in the house, and then the rest of them were in the kennel. The Newfs, quite honestly, primarily stayed in the kennel because the house was too hot for them. Well, the ones we forced to stay in the house were like, oh, it's hot, and they'd have to like sleep by the windows and stuff. But I digress. So here was the interesting observation I made. We used to have a howling. If you didn't know this about Newfs are howlers. I didn't know this about Newfs. Like, I expect Huskies and whatnot to be howlers, but Newfs are howlers as well. And so they would always start this howling that would happen. And we used to call it the song of their people, you know, and part of it was because the way the kennel was set up for the dogs, when we started doing boarding, we had sectioned off part of the kennel, insulated, and put in heaters, like a propane heating system. But again, the Newfs didn't like that. So they were on the other side of that wall in what we would call the cold side for the Newfs. The things you do for the dogs, right? We were like, they don't like it over here. So we created a whole section just for them. So what would happen was they would call out, and everyone in the kennel would start howling. I remember too, because the Newf and the Jack Russell were quite often out there together and listening to, like, because they were best friends. Zach and Lincoln were best friends. So they would kennel together when they were in the barn, and they would all start howling, and it was like the beautiful song of their people. Here's the fascinating part about it, and this part was fascinating for me. The house dogs would never join the howling session. It was literally just the calling of the kennel pack. So this was the pack where they played together. They played with all the other dogs. They saw each other throughout the day. They, all of that. But they didn't come in the house. House dogs never, ever joined that howl. Here's the cool part though. If by chance I was walking to the kennel when the howling began and I had dogs with me from the house, because I would quite often bring a few of the dogs, if not all of the dogs from the house, into the kennel for the day to do the play groups and whatnot. If we were walking to the kennel when the howling session was occurring, as soon as the dogs went into the kennel, they would start howling. They never did it if they were in the house. They'd never even do it if they were in the backyard. that butt up against the other backyard. And I found that to be fascinating. Just this idea, like, now we're a part of this, and they'd all howl together. Like, it was the coolest thing. Anyway, my whole point in saying all this is there's so many of these examples that I have of this us versus them. Now, as someone who's worked with a lot of different, situations and people that have been having dogs that have had conflict or pack dynamic conflicts, I will say one of the biggest problems when it comes to dogs not getting along in the home quite often happens when we have circumstances where people have blended their lives together. So partners getting together and each one of them has a dog, and then they decide to move in together, and we have these conflicts and these differences. And I will say most of the time that is because the household still has a my dog, your dog mentality, right? We have this like, well, this is my dog and then this is his dog, or this is her dog and this is my dog. Like, and I always have to come and be like, no, that's not how it works now. You live under the same roof. They're both your dogs. They're everybody's dogs. You're part of the same unit. You can't have a your dog, my dog situation, because of that human mentality causes conflict. It causes the dogs to have an us versus them dynamic. It causes that tension that you can completely dissipate if you start treating everybody like they are part of the same unit, right? We can't have dogs thinking that this person is against them, right? We need to make everybody feel the same way. So maybe that means, putting your crates side by side. That's what I ended up doing with Gunther's crate. If you look at my house now versus what it was, I have now since crushed my chairs together, squished my furniture, because ideally I needed the two dogs to be side by side rather than across the room from one another, staring at each other, talking smack the whole time, right? So let's see if I remembered everything, because sometimes I get off on a little tangent there. No, I think that's basically it. But we want to make sure that we are now putting everything together. So a couple of the scenarios that I've seen before, in particular, that kind of blends everything, just to give you an idea of how these all of it kind of comes together when we're talking about trying to figure out conflict in your home. I did have a client that it was that exact situation. A couple that had just recently moved in together. The woman had two dogs. The man had one dog, and they had different rules. So she allowed her dogs on the bed. He did not. He wanted to keep that rule because he had trained his dog not to be on the bed. And now they had the one dog that was downstairs. I know someone's going to go, the one dog that was downstairs in his crate, where the dog wanted to be, because that's what he had always known. But the two other dogs were upstairs, not only upstairs, but on the bed, allowed in the room. And what would happen was he would get up first. And because they weren't his dogs, he'd leave her dogs with her. He would go down, let his dog out first, feed his dog, do all of that stuff, and then he would come back, and the two dogs from the bedroom will be sitting up on the landing, just eyes stalking the other dog. And then eventually when she would get up, she said every time she got up and came down, she'd open up the gate and the two dogs would come out, and there would be this scuffle. And there's so many problems with that. You had the us versus them. You have the levels. You have the intimate zone. You also have a dynamic of 2 against 1, right? So the two dogs that were together, that started off together, there's strength in numbers. That's also survival, right? There's strength in numbers. So there were so many points of contention that when I pointed it out to them, they were like, well, gosh, it's no wonder these dogs aren't getting along. And they had maintained this idea, like he would come home for lunch and just walk his dog. right? And not her dogs, because they were her dogs. So there's so much of their life was us versus them, and so much conflict. And then, of course, what ends up happening is there was a lot of blame game going on between the humans, right? Like, well, if he would just do that, or why doesn't he, like, why wouldn't he just walk my dogs? And why wouldn't, and all of that stuff. So there was so much us versus them, levels, intimate zones, possessionary discussions, like you name it. It was in this household. And so while you can start by like putting in rules and putting in more boundaries, now I'm going to say this to you, and please, again, disclaimer, I'm not saying to not have boundaries and crates and gates and all that thing. Please hear me when I say that. Okay. If you have dogs that are putting holes in one another and you're having serious fights, you need to get an aggression specialist into your home to help you manage the behavior. But what I am saying is that if there is a way where you can still use crates and gates, but not have it set up so that it looks like my dog is over here on this crate and your dog is over here on this crate across the room staring at each other. If you can find ways to make some sort of pro-social moments in their life, can the dogs walk together, even if it means muzzling both of them? Muzzling both of them, but having them walk together. Can we start to do things together? Because the more walls and restrictions and the more space that we put these dogs between them, the more you're creating an us versus them. And it's going to be really hard to get past it. Now, again, full disclaimer, please do not do this on your own. Do this with a trainer that can help you. But it's something to consider, and certainly something to consider when bringing in a brand new dog, certainly something to consider if you're fostering dogs, how you set up your space. All of that matters. I'm really nervous about saying those things now that I've said them, that people are going to be like, oh, Tracy said to just put them together. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, obviously. Don't do that. And a lot of the times, especially if you've been dealing with aggressive behavior for a very long time, you're long past the ability to just kind of like walk them together. And that's going to make a huge difference for now, because they've practiced the behavior so often now. It's become almost a habitual thing. So please use a trainer specializing in dog-to-dog aggression. Okay, don't do this on your own. Don't take advice about like that kind of thing from a podcast either. You need someone that can actually see your dogs. I'm just saying, here's some things to think about. Here's some things to think about. All right. So there you have it. I think that's it. I'm like looking at all my notes. I literally have a stack of notes for all of these things. It's all like, it's, if you could see what comes out of my head when I'm like, ooh, let's talk about this and this and this and this and this. And then I go, what was I talking about? I think that's it. Listen, I am going to say this. If you want some help with understanding your multi-dog household and you're not having horrible toothy disagreements that are causing damage, consider coming over to the Fearless Framework. It's an online 12-month program where we get right down to all of this stuff. You're going to start, it literally is seeing the world through your dog's eyes. You'll start to see things completely differently. And I tell you, when you start to see it, you're going to go, oh gosh, that makes sense. You're going to be like me when I walked into my house and went, oh man, that was a rookie mistake. I can't believe I put the crate there. What was I thinking? You're going to see it. You're going to see it. And everything gets easier after that. So if you want to join this program, it's the Fearless Framework. Go to beyondobedience.ca/fearless. Sign up, enroll, join us, be there for the Zoom calls, submit your videos. It's fun. You'll like it. I already had a new member that just sent a message saying she had a mind-blowing experience. And I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that. A mind-blowing experience happened already. Just started. So more of that inside the program. All right, I think that's it for today. Listen, if you like this, be sure to share it with a friend. Give me a 5-star written review. Give me a comment on Spotify. Send me a little voice message at beyondobedience.ca/contact. Hit that microphone. Send me a voice memo. And as always, get out there today, my friend, and be the person that your dog thinks you are. Because your dog thinks that you're amazing, and so do I. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Super duper shout out to Stacy and her amazing dog River. She sent a message in saying that she's so glad she started listening to Tracy and really working on her relationship with River in a way that she can understand. I feel like she and I are much closer now and that she's truly ready for me to lead her. Oh gosh, I love that. Thank you, Stacy. And one more thing. This podcast was meant for entertainment and education purposes only, and it's not meant to replace hands-on professional training. If you are struggling with your dog's behavior, please reach out to a professional in your area. All right, I think that's it. Bye for now.